The year is 37 CE. Rome wakes to whispers of a new emperor. Gaius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, known to the world as Caligula, has ascended the throne. At first there is cautious optimism. The people remember the terror of Tiberius, yet hope lingers that the young prince might restore dignity to the empire. But by the summer of 38 CE, that hope begins to crack. Rumors emerge, whispers of cruelty, indulgence, and desire so extreme it shatters social norms. It starts subtly, a word here, a suggestion there, but beneath the veneer of imperial grandeur, something deeply twisted festers. In the flickering torchlight of the Palatine, Caligula's appetite for power and pleasure is boundless. Senators murmur uneasily in the forum, sensing that traditional restraint holds no weight before him. He is unpredictable, charismatic one moment, terrifying the next. The first shock comes with a grotesque display of dominance over those closest to him. Family, allies, even women of the highest rank are subjected to acts that blur the line between intimacy and cruelty. His mother, Agrippina the Elder, once a figure of respect, now becomes a pawn in a spectacle of humiliation. The details are fragmented, reported by historians such as Suetonius and Cassius Dio, yet their consistency across sources paints a chilling portrait. Caligula weaponizes the body, pleasure, and desire as instruments of terror. By 39 CE, his cruelty has evolved into ritualized excess. The Roman elite, once shields of decorum, are reduced to spectators of his private amusements. A feast, meant for celebration, becomes an arena of subtle but relentless intimidation. Women of noble birth are compelled to satisfy whims that are both intimate and grotesque, their refusal unthinkable. Caligula's acts are never random. Each indulgence carries political weight, a lesson, a warning, a demonstration of power. Fear intertwines with fascination. Senators and courtiers witness him in private, yet speak only in whispers, for to disobey or even question his whims is to invite ruin. The line between pleasure and punishment dissolves, and yet Rome endures, ignorant of the depths of corruption within its palace walls. It is in the spring of 40 CE that the emperor crosses boundaries that even his closest advisors struggle to recount. He takes women of high rank, not as allies nor as political pawns, but as objects of calculated exploitation. The intimate acts are not driven solely by lust. They are strategic, precise, designed to leave victims exposed, humiliated, and utterly powerless. One senator, long loyal to the emperor, is forced to witness his own wife at Caligula's command. Another, a trusted advisor, watches as his sister is drawn into a performance that masquerades as ritual, but is nothing less than an assertion of absolute dominion. The psychological terror is deliberate. Every act resonates like a ripple across Rome's social fabric, shattering trust and breeding suspicion. The emperor's excesses escalate in scale and audacity. By 41 CE, the palace becomes a theater for horrors cloaked in elegance. Guests are invited to banquets with carefully orchestrated spectacles, scenes that mix revelry, intimacy, and threat. Caligula's behavior is meticulous. He choreographs encounters to humiliate, seduce, and assert supremacy. The Romans, trained in the art of decorum, are forced to witness the breakdown of their own moral universe. And yet, fear prevents rebellion. His intimate cruelties are also political tools, tests of loyalty, and instruments of terror. Every whispered gasp, every stolen glance, every broken promise reinforces his control. The lines of consent, privacy, and decency vanish. The city murmurs with the unspoken question: how far can an emperor sink before Rome itself falters? Soldiers and citizens alike whisper about the acts that history records only in fragments. There is the story of a senator's wife, compelled to participate in scenes of forced intimacy under the emperor's gaze. There is the tale of an aristocratic family, humiliated publicly, their honor used as a weapon against rivals. Yet the most insidious horror is invisible, the psychological imprint, the permanent terror, the knowledge that power can corrupt the most sacred aspects of human life. What begins as fascination with youth and charm transforms into a reign defined by control over the most private human instincts. Caligula's acts are intimate because they invade the mind as well as the body. The first part of his notorious acts, the targeting of women in positions of power and influence, is only the beginning. The whispers that haunt the Senate and the streets of Rome are fragmentary but persistent. Even as the empire thrives in outward appearance, the shadow of the emperor's perverse desire looms over the city like a storm cloud, threatening to burst. The consequences are invisible yet profound: shattered families, broken alliances, and a society conditioned to fear the private whims of one man. And while Rome continues its daily rhythm, Caligula's calculated cruelties ripple outward, infecting the empire with uncertainty, suspicion, and dread. By the end of this phase, the stage is set. The emperor has established a terrifying precedent. No one is safe, no intimacy is sacred, and no act of pleasure is free from manipulation. The senators, soldiers, and citizens of Rome feel the tension, though few dare to name it. They wait, knowing the emperor's appetite is endless. And in the shadows of marble corridors behind closed doors, the most horrifying acts of Caligula's reign, acts that history will remember as intimate violations of the body and the soul, are only beginning to unfold. By the autumn of 41 CE, Rome trembles under the shadow of Caligula's whims. The young emperor, barely 30, has transformed the palace into a stage for acts that intertwine desire and terror. The first of his most infamous transgressions emerges: the seduction of the Vestal Virgins. These women, sworn to chastity and guardians of Rome's sacred fire, represent the city's spiritual integrity. Caligula violates not only their vows, but the very essence of Roman religiosity. He summons them to his private chambers, claiming divine purpose. Those who resist are punished, their reputations tarnished forever. Those who obey are trapped in humiliation and fear. In this act, he entwines divinity with depravity, leaving Rome to wonder, can a man who mocks sacred law still rule an empire without consequence? The second act defies the bounds of familial loyalty. Caligula turns his obsession toward his sisters, Julia Livilla and Drusilla. Contemporary sources hint at scandalous intimacy, a deliberate crossing of every social and moral boundary. He elevates Drusilla above all, treating her as both companion and prize, flaunting their bond before the court and city. Senators and citizens witness the subtle, insidious dominance, a man asserting control over blood and desire alike. Drusilla's eventual death is rumored to have shattered him, but his grief does not temper his appetite. Instead, it intensifies, revealing the terrifying mix of love, obsession, and cruelty that defines his reign. Every embrace, every whispered command, carries both personal pleasure and political calculation. The line between affection and terror disappears entirely. Act 3 plunges deeper into psychological warfare. Caligula targets the wives and daughters of Rome's elite, forcing participation in private spectacles under threat of exile or death. The acts are not mere lust. They are ritualized humiliation. A noblewoman, dressed in ceremonial garments, is summoned to satisfy the emperor's caprice, her honor held hostage for the amusement of one man. Those who refuse are destroyed socially, sometimes physically. The intimate becomes a tool of power, a method to dissolve resistance before it can crystallize. Observers report a strange dichotomy. Laughter and revelry mingle with terror and shame, leaving a permanent mark on Rome's social psyche. The emperor's cruelty is subtle yet total. Consent becomes meaningless, and human dignity a fragile illusion. The fourth act is a sinister inversion of hospitality and trust. Guests at imperial banquets discover that no corner of the palace is safe from Caligula's gaze. Women, men, even entertainers are drawn into his games, each encounter a test of loyalty and obedience. Suetonius records instances where courtiers are forced to witness acts that blend eroticism with threat, pleasure with punishment. The boundaries of public and private vanish. Rome's elite, trained in decorum and discretion, are reduced to voyeurs, complicit yet powerless. Each carefully orchestrated scene reinforces the emperor's dominion. Fear interwoven with fascination, horror bound to admiration. In this way, the intimate becomes a weapon, bending the will of those who might oppose him. Act 5, perhaps the most chilling, blurs the lines between deity and man. Caligula openly declares himself a living god, demanding worship and obedience in equal measure. His private acts, once hidden in marble chambers, become public assertions of divine right. He forces senators and citizens to participate in or witness scenes that combine sexuality, ritual, and terror. By asserting supremacy over sacred, familial, and social boundaries simultaneously, he constructs a reality where defiance is unthinkable. The personal becomes political, desire becomes law, and Rome itself is reshaped in his image of domination and perverse indulgence. Every act leaves invisible scars, loyalty purchased through fear, respect replaced by terror, and intimacy weaponized against the body and the mind. Even as the empire functions outwardly, taxes collected, roads built, legions deployed, the psychological devastation within Rome grows. Mothers whisper warnings to daughters. Husbands fear betrayal. Senators tread lightly, calculating the cost of every word and glance. The acts of intimacy are not just personal, they are systemic, a methodical reshaping of social hierarchy through fear, desire, and humiliation. Caligula's power is absolute yet fragile, sustained by a network of terror that infects every stratum of Roman life. The empire's stability masks a deeper rot, a decay of trust, morality, and human dignity at the heart of power. By the end of this phase, the stage is set for tragedy. Caligula's intimate horrors are no longer isolated events. They are a continuum, each act escalating, each victim ensnared in a web of fear and desire. The court and city alike are caught in the oscillation between fascination and horror. The emperor's reign is a study in psychological domination, where pleasure, punishment, and politics are inseparable. The question lingers over Rome. How can a society endure when the ruler has weaponized intimacy itself? The answer, history suggests, is only partial. Fear preserves the emperor, yet sows the seeds of betrayal. By the winter of 41 CE, whispers of assassination circulate in the shadows. Guards, senators, and servants alike speculate on the consequences of a man whose appetites have no limit, whose cruelty has no boundaries, whose control over private and public life is total. Caligula's intimate acts, once secret, have now begun to destabilize his world in ways that mere politics cannot repair. The psychological terror, the humiliation, the subtle manipulation of power through pleasure, these are the true tools of his reign. Rome watches, trapped between disbelief and dread, as the empire teeters under the weight of one man's obsessive desire. And yet the story is far from complete. The most shocking acts, the moments where intimacy crosses irrevocably into horror, are only beginning to surface. The palace corridors echo with secrets, the city hums with unspoken fear, and the emperor himself grows bolder with every transgression. By the time the calendar turns again, Rome will confront the full cost of Caligula's reign, not just the political, but the deeply personal, the private violated, and the human spirit bent beneath the weight of absolute power. The shadows of his actions linger, waiting for the moment history will finally reckon with them. Spring of 41 CE. Rome shivers under a cloud of tension. The city hums with rumors of plots and whispers of betrayal. Caligula's appetite for domination has reached a crescendo, and even those who once cowered now speak in hushed tones about the emperor's audacity. The private acts of intimacy, once carefully hidden behind closed doors, begin to spill into the public eye. Courtiers, soldiers, and citizens witness the perverse blending of lust, power, and fear. The palace itself becomes a theater of terror, its marble corridors echoing with laughter, moans, and the whispered panic of those caught in his orbit. Every corner is a stage, every gaze a measure of submission, every act a warning. The empire watches as Rome's private and public spheres collapse under the weight of one man's obsession. Caligula's behavior grows increasingly grotesque. He invites senators to dine with him, only to humiliate them in front of guests. A senator's daughter is presented as a tool of entertainment, her virtue bartered for the amusement of the emperor. Guards are commanded to participate or look away. No refusal is permitted. His acts are intimate, yet meticulously strategic, each one testing the loyalty of Rome's elite and reminding them of their fragility. The psychological imprint is immediate and irreversible. Fear laced with fascination, desire mixed with terror. The human mind bends under the weight of the emperor's deliberate cruelty, and even the most powerful men tremble in silence. By the summer of 41 CE, Caligula's obsession with his own divinity has reached a grotesque apex. He constructs temples in his own honor and insists on being worshipped as a living god. His intimate acts are no longer confined to private chambers. They become public statements, demonstrations of absolute dominion. He invites nobles, generals, and even foreign dignitaries to witness rituals that blend eroticism and sacrilege. The combination of sexual power and political authority leaves the city reeling. Rome, a civilization built on law, tradition, and hierarchy, is forced to confront the horrifying reality that the emperor is above all constraints, both moral and divine. The psychological terror is compounded by physical violence. Those who resist are punished with swiftness and cruelty. Senators are exiled, beaten, or executed. Women of high rank vanish behind palace walls, their fates whispered but never confirmed. Caligula wields intimacy as a weapon, a glance, a touch, a command, each capable of reshaping alliances, destroying reputations, or instilling lifelong fear. Even within the imperial family, loyalty is bought at the cost of dignity. His sister Drusilla's death is mourned superficially, yet it becomes another tool in his arsenal. Grief twisted into further control, emotion weaponized to assert dominance over all who witness it. As autumn approaches, the emperor's excesses ripple outward. The Roman people, largely unaware of the full extent, feel the effects indirectly. Markets hum, yet tension pervades the air. Soldiers march, yet murmurs of rebellion stir quietly among the ranks. Caligula's intimate cruelties, though focused on the elite, infect the social fabric. Fear becomes a currency, suspicion a survival mechanism, and trust a liability. Every citizen, every family, every political faction must navigate the reality of a ruler who can violate the most sacred human boundaries without consequence. The invisible terror becomes omnipresent, shaping behavior and thought as profoundly as any army or law. By late 41 CE, the palace corridors carry the whispers of conspiracy. Guards and senators alike weigh the cost of survival against loyalty to a man whose appetites are insatiable. The intimate horrors, though extreme, are now inseparable from the political reality. The emperor's private acts are acts of governance. He rules not through decree alone, but through the subtle, devastating manipulation of desire and fear. Rome itself becomes a laboratory of terror, a citywide experiment in submission, where the boundaries of decency, morality, and power are rewritten by one man's obsession. Every whispered conversation, every stolen glance, every shadowed corridor becomes a battleground between obedience and rebellion. The culmination approaches. On January 24th, 41 CE, the inevitable occurs. A group of Praetorian guards, driven by fear, disgust, and the relentless pressure of witnessing centuries' worth of intimate cruelty, assassinates Caligula. His life, defined by domination and perversion, ends violently in the very palace where he exercised control over every private and public act. Rome wakes to shock, relief, and uncertainty. The psychological and social terror he unleashed lingers, far beyond his death. Families, courtiers, and citizens are left to confront the scars left on their minds and the empire's institutions. The intimate horrors, carefully woven into the fabric of governance, cannot be undone. They endure as a warning and a shadow over human vulnerability to unchecked power. In the aftermath, historians struggle to capture the magnitude of his acts. Suetonius Dio and other chroniclers record the extremes of lust and cruelty, but the human cost, fear, humiliation, broken trust, remains largely invisible. The empire survives outwardly, yet Rome itself bears witness to the profound consequences of allowing desire and authority to merge unchecked. Caligula's intimate excesses reveal the fragility of societal norms when confronted with absolute power. They remind us that tyranny often invades the most private corners of life, leaving scars as indelible as the most public atrocities. And so, as the empire turns its gaze forward, the shadow of Caligula's reign persists. It is a study in human vulnerability, in the corruption of intimacy, in the weaponization of desire. Rome rebuilds its order, yet the psychological ruins remain. Senators, wives, daughters, and citizens alike carry the memory of one man's obsession, a haunting reminder that when power wields intimacy as a tool of terror, no one, not even the mighty, is safe. The question that lingers is uncomfortably clear. How far can humanity descend when the private is invaded by the imperious will of the powerful? And what remnants of the spirit survive the deliberate domination of body and soul? The death of Caligula in 41 CE does not erase the terror he sowed. Rome exhales, yet the shadows linger. Marble halls that once echoed with laughter now whisper with memory. Stories of violated trust, shattered families, and the manipulation of intimacy as a weapon of power. The elite may resume their duties, the Senate may convene, and the empire may appear outwardly stable. But beneath the surface, a subtle trauma permeates every corner of Roman life. Those who witnessed, endured, or were complicit carry scars invisible to law or history. Fear, once carefully curated, transforms into a silent inheritance passed down through whispers, glances, and the cautious behavior of those who survive. The personal consequences are profound. Women who endured humiliation retreat into quiet exile, their reputations irreparably damaged. Families once powerful find themselves fractured, loyalty replaced with suspicion. Children grow under the shadow of a father's or uncle's terror, internalizing lessons about the fragility of safety and the omnipresence of power. Caligula's acts were intimate, yet their impact extends far beyond the bedroom or the palace chamber. They infiltrate minds and reshape social codes, creating a culture in which privacy is fragile and human dignity is negotiable. The city itself bears witness. Every stone, corridor, and public forum becomes a reminder that absolute authority, when combined with unchecked desire, corrodes the very foundations of society. Politically, the assassination of Caligula offers only temporary relief. His successor, Claudius, inherits a fractured court, a wary senate, and an empire still reeling from the psychological terror inflicted upon its citizens. Historians note a period of caution, a reluctance to challenge imperial will, and an ingrained awareness of the danger posed by intimate power wielded without restraint. Caligula's reign serves as a case study in the subtle methods of tyranny. Domination does not require armies alone. It can reside in whispered commands, forced participation, and the strategic violation of trust. The empire learns, silently, that human desire and fear can be weaponized as effectively as swords or laws, and that recovery from such manipulation is measured not in years, but in generations. The cultural repercussions extend further still. Rome, a civilization built on civic duty, religious observance, and the codification of honor, confronts the realization that even its most sacred boundaries are vulnerable. Intimacy, normally protected by law, morality, and social convention, becomes a battleground for domination. The elite, whose lives are chronicled by historians, experience firsthand the erosion of power, autonomy, and ethical certainty. Meanwhile, the populace absorbs these lessons indirectly through rumor, speculation, and the subtle transmission of fear. Caligula's legacy is less a catalogue of acts and more a psychological template. How one individual, through obsessive desire and meticulous cruelty, can destabilize institutions, fracture families, and reshape societal norms. Philosophically, the reign of Caligula illuminates enduring truths about human nature and the corruptive potential of power. Absolute authority, unchecked by morality or constraint, seeks to dominate not only territory but the most intimate aspects of life. Desire, when weaponized, becomes indistinguishable from terror. Governance intertwined with personal indulgence yields not efficiency or prosperity, but psychological devastation and social erosion. In studying Caligula, historians confront a cautionary pattern repeated across centuries. Empires may rise and fall, yet the human costs of unrestrained authority often outlast armies, laws, and monuments. The private realm, when invaded by the imperious will of the powerful, leaves wounds invisible yet permanent. The psychological imprint of his reign lingers centuries later, captured in texts, letters, and chronicled whispers. Roman historians preserve fragments of horror, hints of whispered suffering, and records of fear that no law could erase. Scholars and readers alike are confronted with the uncomfortable realization that power can corrupt the most intimate human relationships, and that terror need not always be public to be absolute. Caligula's reign exemplifies the delicate balance between authority and morality, desire and restraint, intimacy and manipulation. Even in death, his actions echo, a reminder that the human spirit is vulnerable to domination not only by force but by cunning, obsession, and the deliberate violation of trust. In reflecting on these events, one sees the cyclical patterns of history. Tyrants who manipulate desire, rulers who blur public and private boundaries, societies complicit through fear. Caligula's intimate acts, though shocking in their extremity, are part of a broader human narrative. The collision of power with human vulnerability, the exploitation of trust, and the consequences of allowing personal indulgence to dictate governance. Rome survives outwardly, yet the moral and psychological imprint endures. The empire learns to guard its institutions, but human nature, with its susceptibility to fear and fascination, remains unchanged. The final lesson is subtle, unsettling, and enduring. History remembers Caligula for his cruelty, his excess, and his intimate atrocities. But the deeper truth is psychological. Unchecked power reshapes not only the world, but the very minds of those living under it. The victims, families, courtiers, and citizens alike carry his legacy in silence, each act of domination leaving echoes in behavior, culture, and societal expectation. And in contemplating this, one is compelled to ask, how often do systems, leaders, or institutions rely not on laws or armies, but on the quiet, invisible terror that manipulates desire, fear, and trust? Caligula's reign is a dark mirror, reflecting the vulnerabilities inherent in every society, every relationship, every human connection. Rome moves forward. The marble stones endure, the empire persists, and history records a reign defined by extraordinary excess and intimate terror. Yet for those who study it, the true horror is not merely the acts themselves, but the enduring lesson. That power unchecked will always seek the most private spaces, that desire wielded as a weapon corrodes trust and dignity, and that humanity's most intimate bonds are fragile when confronted with absolute domination. Caligula dies, but the shadows he cast over intimacy, authority, and the human spirit stretch far beyond his lifetime, haunting every generation that dares to confront the perilous intersection of desire, cruelty, and unbridled power.